Hello and welcome, I'm Dante, this is Lomana, and in this episode of Short Watch, I'll be talking you through all the new lore from the Rise and Shine short, covering the events that led to May becoming the friendly yet fierce climatologist we know today. We begin with a video diary from May, a sight into life before the incident at Eco Point Antarctica. Her desk shows some of the data we can see on the live versions of the map. Confirmation of the approaching storm at -43°C. The second monitor is just a general map of the region. The important expositions come from what she says. The base is having issues. The storm has cut off their supply routes, meaning the supply drops have failed, and the food is running low. Captain Opara, the Numbanian who runs the Eco Point Antarctica operation, can then be seen coming into shot. To prevent the crew having to starve through a rough storm, everyone is taking a nap in his words, going into hibernation while they wait out the storm, which to us feels like they were aiming for approximately 1 month or maybe only a handful for supply routes to be reconnected, which is something to remember as we already know what happens in the long term. What I do find really odd about this opening is that Opara complains that May is holding up their hibernation while she continues to work and records her vlog. He brings her coffee while doing this. Not exactly something that makes sense considering they're about to hibernate. But anyway, back to the lore. The reason May is running late in the first place is to set up the Eco Point sensors to collate data while they are in the pods, which will leave her with a huge amount of data to study once they are released. A plan that turns out to be more valuable than she could ever have imagined. Finally, May makes her way to the pods. The base along with its scientists go into hibernation as we see the lights flicker off, including Snowball going to standby in his little recharge point. Unfortunately, as we all know, the storm is far worse than expected. The base is damaged, its only communication to the outside world disrupted, as the tower is damaged and all its equipment freezes over. A significant amount happens in this period. Overwatch falls, Blackwatch is discovered, Omnic tensions begin to rise, corporations take over the world's security, and Talon's influence grows, bringing a second crisis closer to reality. Eventually, the time passes. The battery supplies that have been preserving the base begin to fail, and outside communications that have been cut off for years attempt to reconnect. We see the screens flicker back to life, giving us a brief glimpse at the background of the workstation. Most of these are fairly generic files, but a few of these tie back to the research that was once conducted here. Weather patterns tracking, CO2 monitoring, temperature tracking, the stasis pod diagnostics, one of which seems to have an error message running over it, the satellite connections which is showing partially red, and finally a weather alert most likely from the previous storm that led to the current situation. The monitor next to this is reminiscent of the old Overwatch team photos, showing the full team as it arrives at Eco Point Antarctica for its assignment. We can even see Snowball hanging out in the background. Unfortunately, this is just a reminder of what has been lost as the stasis pods kick back into gear. 5 have lost connection to the system, but fortunately the last activates, bringing May back to the world, currently completely unaware of what has happened during her nap. She casually stumbles back to life, and follows her morning routine to get ready and start the day off with some coffee for the whole team, moving to the ping pong table to check out the data from her reports, revealing the storm data from before they entered the pods along with the holographic map showing the anomaly that May has been investigating, with other red triangles littering the area. These could potentially be the sensors collating the data, now damaged after all of this time. There is a monitoring report to the side confirming 72% availability, but I'm not too sure what this is referring to. Could be to do with the data, or it could be a random stat line with no actual meaning. Although the main question is, what is the anomaly? How did they discover it? And what are they trying to understand about it? From the map it seems to be underground, or at least have an origin there, but no actual mentions of what specifically it is and why it's so important. Whatever it is, it's been getting worse. The reports that May pulls up show something spiking, and getting worse more recently. It's about now a realization hits May. Why is no one else awake? And why is there so much data? It's been 9 years. The data has been running this whole time, and they've been stuck here, abandoned. The next part of the short is actually where we find the most information, and it has little to do with May herself, using the large screens on the base to show magazines and news from the past 9 years. This is where May receives a lot of her information about what's happened to the world while she's been gone, while giving us some more meat to the bones of the Overwatch story in the process. Although each piece of media doesn't come with dates, we can estimate roughly in the timeline each sits due to the information they reference. First up is Insight, a magazine with the title Omnics Can Humans Stay Relevant, with the key members of Overwatch shadowed in the background and another banner to the footer. The title is an insight into how the people in the Overwatch world feel, and this isn't something we often get to see. During Overwatch's reign, Omnics and humans became closer in both their rights and standards of living. It seems that some fear the Omnics that remain, as their potential to become the leaders in most aspects of society, from manual labour to scientists, is hard to deny. The banner at the bottom is a reference to a relatively well-known event in the Overwatch universe, the test of the Slipstream, an experimental fighter plane piloted by Lena Oxton, better known as Tracer. This article seems to be before the accident though, due to the headline. Is this fighter the definitive weapon in aerial warfare? But does this mean the plane was public knowledge before even being tested, which isn't that common when you consider this as an experimental military weapon? Perhaps that's one of the requirements of Overwatch technology. This just feels odd though. I wonder if the outcome of the test flight was as widely reported. The poster in the centre is US Politics, a political journal covering the discovery of Blackwatch, with the headline, "In the Shadow of Overwatch," with the image of Gabriel. This puts us right near the fall of Overwatch, and considering the other articles mentioned, it could be a little after. The article Defense Contracts, Who's Involved, Our Exclusive Report, is likely referencing companies such as Helix taking on board previous Overwatch responsibilities, and this title hints there's something else behind the contracts. Potential corruption, or possibly a conspiracy. To the right is a news report showing the tensions turning to violence, with police officers beating Omnics, one of the many references to Uprising no doubt, followed closely by an Overwatch fractured logo, to add to the feeling of division May has been completely unaware of. The next article is a little different, Tomorrow Technology Explained, with the headline, The New Omnic Future. We believe this is a direct reference to the new varieties of Omnics that we have seen, and links back to one of the other articles about humans staying relevant, as Omnics are becoming better, stronger, faster and smarter. It's putting the mortality of humans into the spotlight, as in theory Omnics can outlast everyone and may be the true future for the planet. The development of the newer models isn't something new though, we've seen several already. From the versions like Zenyatta, who lead the spiritual enlightenment, to the more modern looking in the form of Maximilian of Talon. The last piece of information is on the widespread use of nanotechnology, which we already know is linked to the medical research Mercy has conducted, and many other industries seem to be taking it on board. Not really something that's been discussed in the world yet, generally we see the larger kinds used for war. Hopefully we'll be seeing more about this technology as it becomes more prevalent. The King's Road Times is another link back to the Uprising, but it does have an interesting mention to VR, perhaps a subtle reference to Ready Player One, or if you like hats of the tinfoil variety, Blizzard is working on a VR game. I'll stick with the book reference personally though. The next is the Inquirer, and honestly, considering the situation May finds herself in, it makes the least sense. This proves that people remember Eco Point Antarctica existed, and it was cut off by a storm, so why did no one come? Overwatch existed for several more years. The scientific community knew of its existence. How could no one find the base again, with all the satellites and technology available? This just feels strange, unless there is another reason linked to the anomaly. But even then, finding out what happened to this base and the research it was conducting would be vitally important to preventing it happening again. I guess on a plus side, they give us 10 tips on how to help fight climate change. Following this is a new segment showing yet another reference to the Uprising. Apparently they wanted to hammer down their connections specifically. This time we see Mondatta and the Mayor of London at this time, Mayor Nandar, who were both captured by Null Sector in the events of Uprising, although at this point holding a press conference declaring the Turing Green development as going ahead, and we all know how well that turns out in the end. The final paper almost slams against the screen. Atlas News confirming that Overwatch has fallen, outlawed by the Petrus Act. This sudden realization hits May hard, knowing that no one knows her team is there, quickly running back to the capsules, only to discover that they all failed, their bodies trapped within. She is now alone, cut off from the outside world. Her friends and her team gone in the middle of nowhere. Several hours pass, with the company of Snowball, mourning the loss of her friends. Fortunately for us though, May still finds purpose, and takes their loss as motivation to make their sacrifice mean something. She holds in her hands enough data to potentially save millions of lives. This raises what we reckon is going to be one of the biggest long-term plot lines to come out of this. Just what data is she holding? What exactly is the anomaly? Now how could info on it save millions of lives? We'd love to hear thoughts from you guys on this, but we're expecting May and, in time, the rest of New Overwatch to drive this story forward in the future. Putting on a new suit we've not seen before, May then sets out to assess the problems preventing her contacting the outside world. At first it seems as though all her options are exhausted. Everything is frozen over, the snow is too thick to initially traverse, and the tower is crumbling. To me though, the most important thing that we learn is that Snowball can make and deliver coffee. Can't wait until I get my own Snowball to deliver coffee to my desk. Now the power is starting to falter, May knowing she needs to preserve it so that she can survive. That's until the message comes in again from Winston. her only contact to the outside world, even if it isn't actually making it through. This message raises a couple of interesting questions. Given when it first popped up at the start of the short, it seems likely that this is what woke up the eco point, and therefore brought Mei out of cryo. In this sense, Winston unintentionally saved her life, which is pretty cool. As ever though with Overwatch and our videos, it always raises the question of timelines. With all the other media pushing the story forward, it seems logical that this short is also set very recently in the Overwatch universe. Indeed, we'd be tempted to argue that nobody even knows about Mei's return. But there are 3 bits of evidence that make this impossible. Firstly, we had the Atlas News article on Overwatch's return, which mentions a Chinese environmentalist with a taste of adventure. And secondly, she shows up on the news in the background of the Reflections comic, so this places the short around the same time as Recall. We also have a blog article that was used as a teaser before she was even unveiled in the early beta. And that talks about her visiting various parts of the world while she has her blaster, which means it must be set after this short. Anyway, at this point, Mei completely forgets about the power issues, and forges on to find a way out of her bleak situation. It doesn't take her long to come up with a plan, a rather odd one, but a plan nonetheless. To repair the tower with ice, and this is the birthplace of her signature weapon. I'm hoping this is something she's been researching for a while, or this could just be one of those sparks of genius moments. Using her hairdryer as the base, presumably because it's the only remotely gun-shaped object on site, she sets to work, building a complete frame out of scrap, scavenged parts from around the base to complete the pipes, heating modules and a regulator, even using a can of whipped cream as a propellant. Then she gets to work on the solution that forms the freezing liquid. I honestly have no idea how this works, but mixing water, another chemical and then electrolyzing it apparently makes on-impact ice ore crystals resembling ice. I'm not sure of how much time this supposedly takes, but from the giant pile of instant noodle pots, I'm going to say a couple of days. Just as the gun is about to be completed, she suddenly remembers she was supposed to be preserving power. Running experiments and powering a large part of the base isn't exactly the best way of going about it. As the lights flicker out, so does Mei's hope. She got so close to finding a way out. Well, until Snowball uses what little power he has left for her to finish it. Now she has another thing to motivate her over that last hurdle, the tower. We finally see Mei's gun in action for its first trial, repairing the structure while almost falling off, dying and taking the tower with her, but fortunately the power to freeze things is much better than she expected. Using an antenna made out of random utensils and scrap, the message from Winston rings through, although I'm pretty sure she was hoping to send out her data as well. Seeing her old friend attempting to rebuild Overwatch restores her faith in her work, being the second member that we know of to at least acknowledge the call, even if she can't respond. As a new day breaks, Mei sets out into the wilderness with the supplies she can muster, even finding a way to save Snowball on the journey, closing out with her reaching the peak of a nearby mountain, already covering miles. She's finally on her way. Now that we've covered the lore, there's a lot of nice Easter eggs that we wanted to mention that aren't necessarily story related or key aspects. Something we see many times throughout is coffee, and as such we have some nice mugs on display. Mei has her Murloc head that you can actually buy in the Blizzard store. The other members have mugs to give us a little nod to their personalities. One is of 2 dogs, presumably their pets. Another is the squid we see on many of the maps, notably Li Jiang. The coffee aroma shop makes an appearance, along with one with the Overwatch logo. You may notice the Overwatch logo in the short is a little different. It seems the Eco division of Overwatch, or perhaps the Science division itself, has an altered version with the orange becoming green. Makes you wonder what all the logos for the other divisions are, and indeed just how many divisions Overwatch had at its peak. One of the first things we see Mei do when she wakes up is slip on some slippers, of a Yeti, or assuming she's a Star Wars fan, her Wampa slippers. Her pyjamas themselves are also covered in polar bears, a nod to the cold, although polar bears themselves live in the Arctic, not Antarctica. Her top is a clear reference to the Summer Gamers event, which is going on at the time of the short's release. So that's it for this episode. Are there any Easter eggs we've missed or story elements we've left out? What did you think about the short compared to the others? Let us know in the comments section below. We finally have enough to start working on a Mei lore watch, so look for that in the coming days or weeks. Thanks for watching this episode. If you enjoyed this vid, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to see more. If you want notifications of content as it goes live, don't forget to hit that little bell. And as always, we'd love to hear your feedback in the comment section below. Until next time, I've been Dante, thanks for watching.